Our topic is the environment. This is by Cindy, Jessica, and Tanner. How is the current state of the environment like? We can figure this out based on how our current trends look like in the future. Air pollution can change the atmosphere's composition that results in climate change and the depletion of the Earth's ozone layer. Maintaining the outside air is a must, as it can compromise human health, life, radiation, and the environment. Regarding environmental contaminants, there is a clear connection between human diseases and exposures to the hazardous environment. The environment is important to protect and preserve, as the side effects of a hazardous condition involves the first, second, third, and fourth leading causes of death: coronary heart disease, cancer, respiratory disease, and stroke, respectively in that order. With an increase in contaminants, we can expect more toxicity in the air and water, with acid rain as a prime example. Currently, there is extreme drought in the left-hand side of the United States, which includes Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Colorado, Texas, Oregon, and Utah. We can expect these drought conditions to spread throughout the central part of the United States. This can affect the precipitation, where the southern part of the U.S. will be drier than normal, and the top will be wetter than normal. According to Neil Jacobs, PhD, the NOAA can predict the outcome of climate change with a 3-month cycle using satellites, computer forecast modeling, and the supercomputing capacity. Our current state of the environment is in serious threat if we do not act on it as soon as we can. Our planet suffers from land degradation, biodiversity loss, pollution in air, land, and water, and the effects of climate change. Without biodiversity, our climate will be left unregulated with unfiltered air and water. We would face problems with soil and have more issues with natural disasters. Without a healthy Earth, life on it will decline, or worse yet, even extinct. According to the National Geographic, there are 42% of land-based invertebrates, 34% of freshwater invertebrates, and 25% of marine invertebrates that are on the road to extinction. Not only are the animals suffering, but so is the Earth's quality with its agriculture and water. The land used to harvest and farm crops is becoming less and less fertilized and less resourceful. In conclusion, our environmental state is in inadequate condition, judging by the NOAA forecast. Dry weather and extreme drought cases are seen majorly in the southern part of the United States of America. It will only take a short amount of time for all of that to spread into the central and northern part of the country before it's too late and damages are irreversible. Without a satisfactory environment, there will be imminent illnesses in organisms, with an increase in extinction rates alongside the degradation of agriculture, air, and water quality.
Now we're going to take a look at the greenhouse effect. Here is a short clip that gives a visual of how it works. So to go a little more in depth, the greenhouse effect is the way in which heat is trapped close to the surface of the Earth by greenhouse gases. These gases include carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxides. These heat-trapping gases can be thought of as sort of a blanket wrapped around the Earth, which keeps it warmer than it would be without them. Greenhouse gases arise naturally and are a part of the makeup of our atmosphere. According to NASA, Earth is sometimes called the Goldilocks planet, as it is not too hot, not too cold, and the conditions are just right for life, including us, to flourish. The naturally arising greenhouse effect keeps the planet at an average of 59 degrees Fahrenheit. In the last century or so, humans have been interfering with the energy balance of the planet, mainly through the burning of fossil fuels that give off an additional carbon dioxide into the air. Some of the main factors that have caused Earth's climate to change many times are the variations in the sun's energy reaching the Earth, changes in the reflectivity of the Earth's atmosphere and surface, changes in the greenhouse effect, which affects the amount of heat retained by Earth's atmosphere. So going back to the greenhouse effect, Earth's temperature depends on the balance between energy entering and leaving the planet's system. When incoming energy from the sun is absorbed by the Earth system, Earth warms. When the sun's energy is reflected back into space, Earth avoids warming. When absorbed energy is released back into space, Earth cools. Many factors, both natural and human, can cause changes in Earth's energy balance. The book that I chose is called Advancing the Science of Climate Changes by the National Research Council, and it talks about the greenhouse effect and how it specifically affects the climate. Their description was that when sunlight reaches the Earth, it can be reflected or absorbed. So going back to what we had talked about earlier. But the amount that is reflected or absorbed depends on the Earth's surface and the atmosphere. So light-colored objects in the surfaces, like snow and clouds, tend to reflect most sunlight, while darker objects and surfaces, such as the oceans, forests, or soil, tend to absorb more sunlight. The term albedo refers to the amount of solar radiation reflected from an object or surface. Often this is expressed as a percentage. Earth as a whole has an albedo of about 30%, meaning that 70% of the sunlight that reaches the planet is absorbed, and that is from the book. Absorbed sunlight warms Earth's land, water, and atmosphere. Now, according to Gunnemere's article, Causing Global Warming, natural changes in reflectivity, like the melting of sea ice, have contributed to climate change in the past, often acting as feedbacks to other processes. Volcanoes have played a noticeable role in climate. Volcanic particles that reach the upper atmosphere can reflect enough sunlight back to space to cool the surface of the planet by a few tenths of a degree for several years. These particles are an example of cooling aerosols. Volcanic particles from a single eruption do not produce enough long-term change because they remain in the atmosphere for much shorter time than GHGs. So this is a small amount that plays a part into climate change. There is also a natural process that does cause the climate to change naturally, but humans do also play a part in it. Human changes in land use and land cover have changed Earth's reflectivity. Processes such as deforestation, reforestation, desertification, and urbanization often contribute to changes in climate in the places that they occur. These effects may be significant regionally, but are smaller when averaged over the entire globe. Like stated earlier, these can cause an increase of carbon dioxide into the air, which affects the makeup of the atmosphere and can trap more heat within it. According to Advancing the Science of Climate Changes by the National Research Council, not only has the previously listed things affected the climate and environment, but also going back to those human activities, some other things that they do, such as burning of fossil fuels, can increase the number of aerosol particles in the atmosphere, again changing the atmosphere composition. The human-generated aerosols have a net cooling effect, offsetting about 1/3 of the total warming effect associated with human greenhouse gas emissions. So reductions in overall aerosol emissions can therefore lead to more warming. However, Targeted reductions in the black carbon emissions can reduce the warming. One of the other articles I found was by Andre Tavinirin. He conducted a survey for his journal, and the survey finds that respondents systematically perceive climate change as a greater threat to the world than to themselves in 9 of the countries that he surveyed. However, while groups that may be considered more vulnerable to climate change often display higher levels of perceived overall risk, the survey finds evidence of spatial bias to be systematically across and within cases. So this can be an issue because, yes, climate change is a great threat to the world, but I think that it is important for people to realize how much an effect it can have on the individual and how that's going to increase if we continue on treating the environment that we do today. When it comes to the topic of environment, there are so many different avenues that you can go through. Throughout our project, we've talked about a couple different ones, but as we get into some of the voices that are speaking out against it, a couple others will be brought up. One of the main celebrities that is speaking out against environmental issues is Mark Ruffalo. He is a strong advocate against the Keystone XL pipeline, and his main focus is on the effects the oil and gas industry has on the environment. The second celebrity is Robert Redford. He formed the Sundance Foundation, and he is a trustee with the Natural Resources Defense Council and has written several environmental activism blogs for Huffington Post. Leonardo DiCaprio produced the environmental documentary, The 11th Hour. He also serves on many boards that support animal and environmental activism, including World Wildlife Federation and Global Green USA. Cate Blanchett is a green living celebrity who supports many different causes, but does focus on climate care. She has been a longtime ambassador for the Australian Conservation Foundation and has lobbied for carbon tax to limit greenhouse gases and help sustain climate control. 2 other popular celebrities, Brad Pitt and his wife Angelina Jolie, are heavily involved in different areas of activism, hers mostly humanitarian related. But Brad spends a lot of his time focusing on development and sustainability, much of it post-Hurricane Katrina. He is also involved in the upcoming oil business exposing documentary, Big Men. Dr. Jane Goodall is possibly one of the most famous environmentalists. She is a celebrity because of her environmental activism, which shows that you don't have to be a celebrity to be an activist. She has so much power and determination as one person that it's very inspirational to many others. She has her own institute and continues to fight for the protection of animals, environment, and for individuals to do their part to help the environment. Her youth program, Roots and Shoots, has over 150,000 members in 130 countries. Now, the movement that I find to be most inspiring is the Youth for Climate Action. The UNICEF website says at UNICEF we are committed to helping young people take action to protect the future of our planet. We do this by raising youth voices on climate crisis and by increasing youth participation to address climate change. The children and young people of today are the people who are going to face the worst effects of climate change and what we've done to the environment. But these young people are far from being passive victims. There's young people all over the world who have begun to fight back on a scale that has never been seen before. An example is Greta Thunberg. In 2018, she was 15 years old from Sweden, and she sparked a global movement of school-age students demanding greater action from governments to fight climate change. Now millions are marching to demonstrate their support. Whether it's through education, technology, science, or law, young people all over are tapping into their skills to speak up for climate action. I think this is awesome that the young people of today are so passionate about topics like this and things that are going to affect their future. Super inspirational.
All right, so solutions being attempted to combat climate change. The first solution is going to be the Paris Climate Agreement, which actually doesn't require any country to comply with any carbon emission regulations, but is more of just an honorary agreement. The United States withdrew from this agreement in November 5th, 2019. Other solutions being attempted include having regulations on the auto industry. Many auto companies have committed to going full electric by the end of the decade.
We also have NASA's Carbon Monitoring System, also known as CMS, which watches global carbon stocks, where carbon is stored around the planet and how it fluxes. The goal of Megacities Carbon Project is to measure the emissions on greenhouse gases from the world's largest cities, such as Los Angeles and Paris. NASA is working to find other sources of energy that are healthy for the environment, such as winds, waves, the suns, and biofuels. We've been adjusting to the changes in climate change, with specifically drought, and the result of that is either the rise or fall of civilizations. However, we cannot adapt to an alarmingly increasing fast-paced change in the environment. Therefore, there are places around the world that are building flood defenses, planning for heat waves and higher temperatures, installing water permeable pavements to better deal with the conditions of water, as well as improving its use. Our group has ruled these actions towards the progressing climate change as helpful. We have labeled it as such because we can pinpoint more or less where most of the greenhouse emissions are coming from. Since we would know where, we would know that the way carbon emissions are being used would need to reduce in those places, and specifically which businesses or companies that need to take responsibility for their carbon footprints.
All right, so our solutions to combating climate change is to make an amendment to the Paris Climate Agreement to require countries to comply with carbon emissions instead of just encouraging them. One way we could do this is to tariff their imports if they do not comply with carbon emissions. Another is bigger tax credits for people who buy electric vehicles. There currently is a tax credit, but there needs to be bigger. Also, bigger budgets for solar and wind power research would help a lot, because solar and wind power is good. However, it is not good enough to run our cities on solar and wind power alone. A mixture of personal choices and building upon what the government is already doing is the best plan. Making simple lifestyle changes can have a huge impact on the environment, such as cutting down on beef consumption, which helps because cows produce methane gas, which is a very potent greenhouse gas, even more potent than CO2. Also, choosing not to drive short distances can help a lot because those short distances add up over time. Also, reducing food waste is also a great personal choice because food waste produces CO2 as well through landfills. according to the UN, global emissions need to drop by 55% by 2030 if we were able to prevent temperatures rising 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial temperatures, or there will be irreversible damage to the environment. Just to give you a perspective, we have dropped about 1.5% of carbon emissions in the last year, which is not nearly enough as where we need to be. Hopefully in the next 5 years, we can have at least 25% drop in carbon emissions.
And here we have our works cited. And our second page. Thanks for listening.